They said black men were born to serve. That is what they wanted the world to believe, that after centuries of slavery, servitude was just in our blood, natural, inevitable. And for a few decades, one of the richest men in America looked at that lie and decided to build an empire on top of it. He thought he was being smart. He thought he had it all figured out. What he actually did was hand black men the keys to every corridor in this country, and those men used them. George Pullman did not stumble into power. He built it deliberately, car by car, mile by mile, dollar by dollar. By the 1880s, his sleeping cars were the gold standard of American travel. The wealthy elite crossed this country in his beds, ate at his tables, and expected to be pampered every step of the way. And Pullman knew exactly who he wanted doing that pampering. He wanted black men, formerly enslaved black men specifically. His own words, as documented by historian Larry Tye in Rising from the Rails, make it plain. He believed these men had been trained by years of service and were, in his view, naturally adapted to the work. In plain language, he looked at what slavery had done to black people, the trauma, the conditioning, the survival skills built under brutal conditions, and he called it a qualification. He paid them almost nothing. Porters in 1926 earned around $810 a year. They had to work 400 hours or cover 11,000 miles a month just to get that full amount. They paid for their own food. They paid for their own uniforms. They worked shifts that stretched up to 20 hours. And to make the humiliation complete, white passengers did not even bother to learn their names. They called every porter George, as in George Pullman's boy, the same practice that slaveholders used. Stripping a man of his name and replacing it with the master's was alive and well on the rails of modern America. Pullman thought he had built the perfect system, clean, controlled, invisible. He was wrong. And what came next, the covert network, the battles, the ultimate victory, is one of the most powerful stories in American history. A story they have worked very hard to keep out of your textbooks. Here is what actually happened. The porters were smart. They were watching, and they were organized in ways Pullman never anticipated. Because Pullman made one catastrophic mistake. He gave these men access to the entire country, every major city, every train station, every community, north and south. While Pullman saw servants, what he actually had was a mobile intelligence network moving across America at high speed. In the South, a black newspaper called the Chicago Defender was being treated like contraband. White distributors refused to carry it. Local authorities tried to suppress it. But the Defender was speaking directly to black people, about jobs in the North, about dignity, about the reality of what was happening in America. Its founder, Robert Sangstack Abbott, knew who could get it where it needed to go: the porters. They tucked copies into their bags, slid them under seats, passed them hand to hand in barbershops and restaurants across the Jim Crow South. By 1918, the Defender's circulation had climbed to 125,000. By the early 1920s, over 200,000. This was a man-made information highway built entirely by black porters at personal risk, because in some southern states, just carrying that paper could get you in serious trouble. And this matters more than just newspaper delivery. That paper was telling black families in Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, and Louisiana that there was another life available. Jobs in Chicago, freedom in Detroit, the promise of something better in the North. Historians credit the Defender and the porters who distributed it as key forces behind the Great Migration, one of the largest movements of people in American history. Somewhere between 1 and 6 million black Americans left the South between 1910 and 1970. The porters were the ones who spread the word that made that possible. Pullman's railroad empire literally transported the Great Migration. Let that land. The man who thought he was building a permanent servant class was instead moving a people toward liberation. But here is where the full picture gets even bigger than this. By the 1920s, the Pullman Company was the single largest employer of black men in the United States. Over 20,000 African-American men were working as porters and trained personnel. That is not a workforce. That is an army. And like any army, it needed leadership. The problem was that every previous attempt to organize the porters had been crushed. As early as 1900, groups of porters tried to unionize. The company smashed it. In 1909, they tried again. The company responded by creating a fake union. a company-controlled shell organization designed to give the appearance of worker representation while actually doing nothing, and fired anyone who tried to build something real. The Porters needed someone the company could not touch, someone they could not fire, someone they could not buy. They found him in Harlem. A. Philip Randolph had never worked a day for the Pullman Company. That was exactly the point. Born in 1889 in Crescent City, Florida, to a Methodist minister father, Randolph grew up with a deep belief in justice and a deep distrust of systems built on exploitation. By the time the Porters came looking for help in 1925, he was already known as a sharp, principled voice. The Pullman Company's own people called him dangerous. He wore that like a badge. On August 25, 1925, Porters packed a room at the Elks Hall in Harlem to hear Randolph speak. The company knew something was happening. Their spies were almost certainly in that room. And so, in one of the most quietly brilliant moves in labor history, not a single Porter spoke that night. Randolph did all the talking. Because if no Porter spoke, the company had nothing to use against them. No names to report, no faces to match to the organizing. They founded the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters and Maids that night, the first labor organization led by African Americans to receive a charter in the American Federation of Labor. And here is exactly how they tried to stop it. The Pullman Company came hard. They sent spies into the ranks to identify members and sympathizers. They fired workers who showed any union loyalty. They spread propaganda through Black-owned newspapers and churches, painting Randolph as a socialist agitator working against the interests of the community. They were not completely wrong that some Black voices in the community pushed back on the union. Some Porters feared losing the only steady income available to them. Some community leaders saw Pullman as a provider, not an enemy. That opposition was real, and it makes the ultimate victory even more remarkable. Then the company sent Randolph something else, a blank check. According to multiple accounts, widely cited in secondary historical sources, though primary documentation remains under investigation in the Pullman Company archives, they told him to fill it in for any amount up to $1 million. Just walk away. Just stop. Randolph refused. Hold that thought for a second, because what he did instead is exactly the kind of story they tried to erase. Hey family, real talk. YouTube has shut down channels for telling exactly these kinds of stories. So I need you to find us off this platform. Go to blackstories-untold.com, join our mailing list, and make sure we stay connected no matter what they do. Now, back to what happened. Randolph refused the money, and then things got worse before they got better. In 1928, with the union still struggling, Randolph called for a strike. The company announced it had 5,000 replacement workers ready to roll. The strike was called off. Membership collapsed. By 1933, the Brotherhood had fewer than 700 members. The electricity and phones at union headquarters had been cut off because they could not pay the bills. From the outside, it looked like the company had won. But this is where everything connects. Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal changed the game. The National Industrial Recovery Act of 1933 reinforced workers' rights to organize. The Emergency Railroad Transportation Act banned company unions, the exact fake shell the Pullman Company had used to crush earlier organizing. The legal ground shifted. By 1935, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters was certified as the exclusive bargaining agent for all Pullman porters. The company still refused to sign a contract. They fought for 2 more years. Then came August 25th, 1937. 12 years to the day after that meeting at the Elks Hall in Harlem. The Pullman Company sat down across the table from the men they had tried to buy, spy on, fire, and intimidate into silence. And they signed. The working month dropped from 400 hours to 240. Salaries increased by a total of $1.25 million. A formal grievance process was established. It was the largest single wage increase the Porters had ever received. Randolph called it the first victory of Black workers over a great industrial corporation. He was not done. In 1940, Randolph turned his attention to a new injustice. Black men were being pushed into the lowest roles in the defense industry as America prepared for World War II, while the federal government did nothing. Randolph threatened to march 10,000 Black Americans on Washington if President Roosevelt did not act. Roosevelt, terrified of the optics, issued Executive Order 8802 in 1941, the first federal action against racial discrimination in employment since Reconstruction. Randolph did not have to march. The threat alone was enough. Then, in 1948, working alongside Bayard Rustin, Randolph kept the pressure on President Truman until Executive Orders 9980 and 9981 were signed, ending racial segregation in the United States Armed Forces. And one of Randolph's most direct connections to the broader movement walked around in work shoes in Montgomery, Alabama. E.D. Nixon was a Pullman porter, a quiet, steady man shaped directly by his membership in the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. Randolph's thinking had formed Nixon's thinking. When a young woman named Rosa Parks was arrested on December 1, 1955, it was Nixon who bailed her out of jail. Nixon who saw that her case could be a test case. Nixon who reached out to a new young preacher at the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, a man named Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and asked him to lead a boycott. You cannot tell the story of the Montgomery bus boycott without E.D. Nixon. And you cannot tell the story of E.D. Nixon without the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. Then on August 28, 1963, 38 years after that first meeting in Harlem, A. Philip Randolph stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial as one of the principal organizers of the March on Washington. More than 200,000 people stood in front of him. Bayard Rustin, his longtime collaborator and the march's chief logistical architect, had used every organizational skill developed through years of labor movement work to make it happen. That march paved the way for the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Now look at the full picture. Thurgood Marshall, the first Black justice of the United States Supreme Court, was the son of a Pullman porter and worked for the company himself. Malcolm X worked for the Pullman Company before his path took him elsewhere. Roy Wilkins, who went on to lead the NAACP, worked as a porter and later said they worked like house slaves on roller skates. Oscar Peterson, one of the greatest jazz pianists who ever lived, was the son of a porter. Olympian Wilma Rudolph, Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley, San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown, journalist Ethel L. Payne. George Pullman wanted to build a servant class. Instead, he funded and trained one of the most politically connected, strategically organized, and historically significant networks of Black people this country has ever seen. The infrastructure of the civil rights movement, its leaders, its connections, its tactical knowledge, its financial base, ran directly through the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. The same pattern that shows up again and again when you look at suppressed Black history. They think they are building a cage, and Black people build a ladder. The racist logic that said formerly enslaved men were suited for servitude was the same logic that gave those men access to every corner of America. The poverty wages that were supposed to keep them desperate pushed them toward unity. The humiliation of being called George was so enraging that a 31,000-member organization rose up just to get their real names posted in the cars. Every weapon Pullman used against them became a tool they turned around. George Pullman died in 1897 before he could see what he had actually built. His estate was worth $7.6 million. He left behind 2,490 railroad cars and a $63.5 million corporation. He was buried under layers of concrete because his family feared workers would dig him up. Even in death, they were afraid of what the people he had exploited might do. His son-in-law, Robert Todd Lincoln, yes, Abraham Lincoln's son, took over and became one of the fiercest enemies the Union ever faced. The Porters used to say, Lincoln freed the slaves and his son re-enslaved them. But in the end, none of it worked. The empire crumbled. The Pullman Company ceased United States operations in 1968. The same decade the civil rights movement it accidentally bankrolled changed the law of this land forever. They wanted servants. They built revolutionaries. They wanted silence. They got the March on Washington. They wanted invisible men who would answer to someone else's name. They got A. Philip Randolph, E.D. Nixon, Thurgood Marshall, and a generation of Black Americans who understood exactly how power works because they had spent years serving it, studying it, and waiting for their moment. That is the story they erased. That is the story you were never supposed to know. And now you know it. This was Black Stories Untold, and as always, thanks for watching. If you want more stories like this, click the video on your screen now.